Hello and welcome to our first ever Exploring Happiness video. We thought that we'd do these videos along each of our research articles so that you could get a quick insight into what the article's about without having to read the whole thing. Jess is going to start by giving an overview of what happiness economics is all about, and then I'm going to go into some of the most recent findings in happiness economics and ones that we find most interesting.
So, why do we care about happiness economics? Well, in the West, we see GDP, or economic growth, as an indicator for human progress. However, happiness economics research has shown that for Western countries, all measures of happiness have stayed flat since the Second World War, even though most of us have a lot more money nowadays. There is no one way to define happiness economics, so we've come up with our own definition: increasing happiness and well-being in society in a sustainable way. We think this should be the overarching goal of governments today. We choose to define happiness economics to include environmental sustainability. The point here is that any increase in happiness that significantly damages the environment is going to have a significant impact on future generations and on their happiness, because they're having to mop up the mess that we've made in the here and now. So, to summarise, our aim is to design governmental policies that make people feel great without detriment to Mother Nature.
Absolutely. Okay, so the last section, we're just going to talk about some of our favourite literature. So in the paper that we've written alongside of this, we've got 6 different sections, but I'm just going to talk about 3 of them now, which are income, employment and inequality. So starting with income, most of the literature is looked at comparing wealthy countries with poor countries and seeing how happy they are. And the literature finds that wealthy countries are in fact happier on average than poorer countries. But then once we take those wealthy countries and we look at them across time, as Jess mentioned, a lot of happiness measures for these countries have stayed the same. So they find that above a certain threshold, any increases in income have no impact on your happiness. What really matters from an income perspective is your relative income. So this is who you compare your income against. So you might see a group of people that you think you're really similar to, and if you have a higher income than them, then you'll have a positive impact on your happiness, whereas if you have a lower income than them, that has a negative impact on your happiness. So then, for employment, we split this into 2 sections. So looking at, the literature splits it into 2 sections. So looking at people that are employed, the most important factor that affects their happiness is their job satisfaction. So this is quite intuitive. It makes sense that if you enjoy what you're doing, you're going to be happier as a person. Then on the other side, for people that have been made unemployed, for those that have short-term unemployment, most of the change is related to the fact that they have a knock to their income, and this affects their happiness, but only by a small amount. And then those that become unemployed for a longer amount of time, the much bigger impacts on their happiness, and it can be a large impact, will be due to the fact that they are more likely to have mental health issues, and they lose their position in society that having a job gives you. And then lastly, for inequality, the research has shown that for countries with greater inequality, so a less equal wealth distribution, we find that these countries are less happy. So that kind of makes sense. It makes sense that countries that are more unequal on average are going to be less happy than countries that are more equal. And there's been some really interesting research that we've been looking into on this. One paper in particular looks at how hard people work and their perceptions of inequality. So this paper says something like, people that are really hard working, they don't mind it so much when there's higher inequality in a country. So they feel the fact that they work harder than other people should be the case, that they are compensated for that, so they get paid more than other people, so they don't have such a problem. Whereas people that don't have such a preference for working hard, when there is a really unequal wealth distribution, they find that really affects their happiness and they're really unhappy about that. So these are the kinds of findings that we're going to look to try and generate through our own research over the next couple of years. We hope that you find it interesting, and look forward to doing some more of these videos in the future.